I have decided to give up.
On what?
On you. I do not believe the backflip is going to happen. For the audience, I think 2 weeks ago, I asked you, you asked me, what would I be surprised about if something you could do? Like something you could do that I'd be surprised to learn you could do. And I said a backflip. And you said you could learn how to do a backflip in a week. And it's now been, I guess it's week 3 of you not knowing how to do a backflip. I'm not even going to ask because I know you don't know how to do one. And I've decided to give up. I'm no longer going to ask anymore because I don't think you're ever going to do it.
Damn. I mean, I don't know how to do a backflip, but the weight of lowered expectations that you have placed upon my shoulders, really, it is hefty. I could feel it. Yeah. But sorry to have just.
Sorry, the lowered expectations is heavier than the.
Yes.
The fact that I don't believe you anymore. I don't have any faith. Is that
it's
heavier
on me? It's like when Jean Valjean, right? When he steals the candlesticks from the priest, it's one thing. But when the priest sees him afterwards, then it's a whole other thing, you know? You're the priest.
No, because I don't know what you're referencing, but sure, I'm sure some one person. Oh, yeah, okay. I don't really remember the names of the characters in Les Mis too well, so...
Damn.
I'm surprised you
Hugh
got
Jackman.
your... See, that helps.
Yeah,
I try not to remember French people. It's a version I have.
Good. Good. If there is one group that you don't need to remember, it's the French. But you know what you do need to remember? Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles Long. With me, as always, my co-host, producer, co-pilot, gun navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob?
Charles, I am very swell and excited because we're back in another episode of the podcast. We pitch new TV show ideas every single week with new worlds, new characters, thrilling stories, all of which are packaged into these exciting little shows and films that we come up with. And Charlie, this week, I have a new show. It's my turn. I've come up with a show. You gave me the title, which was...
The Backup Plan.
Exactly, The Backup Plan. And I told you last week that the show that I came up with is only loosely related to the title at this point, because I started writing it, and then it just sort of went off into its own direction. The short blurb that I'm going to give you is that a man goes to a scientific experiment center after losing his job and his girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
So, who are we following, Charlie? Our main character, David Ghent. Ghent is spelled Ghent. He's a run-of-the-mill office worker at a banking company. He's good at his job and he works hard, but has little to no future. He likes the simple life, going on occasional trips with his girlfriend, staying home, watching TV, and he has no real strong desires or passions. He's kind of content with his life, doesn't really want to, doesn't want a bigger job, doesn't want more money, doesn't want a bigger house, doesn't want a nice car, doesn't want to write a book, doesn't really care about, like, visiting, different places around the world. He just, he's happy with his simple little life. And his girlfriend, Charlie, her name is Victoria. She hates her family, and David has sort of become her substitute family. She has recently become very aloof, and she works late all the time. She cares a lot about her career in marketing and works for a startup that is actually progressing quite quickly, so becoming like an actual company. And she's very reserved, and while she used to be more open with David, she now only really talks about simple things like work and the weather and, the little blips in the day. Nothing deep. They're not talking about poetry. They're not talking about how they feel about society.
Yeah.
They're just talking about, oh, how was your day? Oh, how was your day? Oh, the weather was ugly. And not really even like deep things about the day. Like she's not talking about like her coworker that made her upset. She's like, oh, we're working on a new project and blah, blah, blah. And, it was raining this morning and I forgot my coat.
Damn.
Very, very mundane things.
He's losing her.
He is losing. Because that's the point. That's what I told you in the blurb, Charlie. So, episode 1. David is sitting at his desk, nearly finishing up an earnings report, when he suddenly decides that he wants to quit his job. He stands up and he goes to his boss's office and announces his decision. His boss, of course, is very confused. He says that he's realized that, he doesn't like it here and that he can no longer work at this office for another second. And his boss asks him like, okay, can you at least just like finish the report, wait until the end of the day, maybe a week to think it over, and I'll even give you a raise. And he pleads with him, saying that everyone likes him at the company, but David is clear. It's not about the company. It's not about the pay. It's not about the people. He's just realized he can no longer do this job anymore, and then he has to leave immediately. And this is a very stark, firm statement, and the boss is completely stunned. He doesn't really know how to react to this, because, if somebody wants to quit their job, it's usually because of, like, the work environment or, like, the pay or something. He can't really wrap his head around the fact that David he's just firmly and completely decided that he can't stay there anymore, and for no real strong reason that at least the boss can understand. So the boss is stunned, and David, and the boss agrees, and David he walks out. He, doesn't even pick up anything from his desk. He just leaves everything there, and he goes out the door. And he goes for a walk in the park. He enjoys an ice cream, has like a nice little day, just walking around, looking around. Kind of like for the first time enjoying his surroundings, because he feels like this weight off his shoulder of not having to work anymore. And he gets home, and he tells his girlfriend. And Charlie, what do you expect her reaction would be? She'd be upset, right?
Yeah, she's gonna be mad at him because he didn't talk to her before he made this massive decision. Or maybe she's gonna be like, what are you gonna do with your life? You're a bum. Something like that.
Yeah, that's what you'd expect, Charlie, because that would make sense. But she's strangely completely unbothered by it, and she's like, well, I guess that's fine. I make enough money, so we'll be okay. And David's surprised to hear this, but he doesn't really express it to her. He just is just sort of stunned, as like his boss was stunned. He is stunned by his girlfriend's reaction to his news that he's leaving his job. And so he makes dinner. They eat together and they chat about more meaningless things. In the morning, when they wake up together, she turns to him as her alarm goes off, and she says that she's leaving him. She says it's not about another man or, that he just quit his job. It's just that she's felt this way for some time, and she now finally feels that she's sure in her decision. And he agrees quite calmly, saying, he hasn't felt the same passion in a while, but he asks her to take up the lease and let him be the one who actually leaves the apartment. And they have a bit of an emotional conversation about what they meant to each other and how they drifted apart. And then David, he packs a small suitcase, doesn't even take most of his stuff. He says that, he'll come back with a box or something when he is settled. And he drives north to a small town where he rents a motel for the night. And he starts traveling. He travels the eastern seaboard of the United States, just doing basic sightseeing that he's never done. Goes to New York, goes to, see Manhattan and walks around, checks out Central Park and all that kind of stuff. He goes to Boston, going all around the East Coast of the United States, Philadelphia, all those places, and doing little sightseeing, eating food he hasn't had before. And he's mainly just either living in his car, or sometimes he'll rent a motel room for very cheap. Never in a city, but on the edge of, in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania or something like that.
Yeah.
Not in a proper
Psycho style. Motel 6 off the side of the street, creepy man looking through the peephole. That sort of place. Nowhere fancy. Somewhere cheap.
That's what he's looking for. And so he continues his travels until he eventually reaches Maine, where he stays in a small town motel and realizes he doesn't have enough money to pay the bill. And as he's fretting about this, he sees an ad in the newspaper about doing some scientific survey, which would give him a little bit, enough money to pay the bill and get lunch as well. So he goes to this large building to check it out. And it's this big, tall, not like a skyscraper tall, but probably at least 8 stories building that's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's isolated. There's not a whole lot around besides, the big parking lot that's in front of the building. And the big parking lot is almost entirely empty. There's probably 6 cars in it, but this is massive parking lot. So imagine this big white building, very few windows, kind of brutalist architecture, big parking lot up front, no cars. It's pouring down rain. He parks all the way in the front, and just as he's about to get out of his car, he feels weird about being being parking in the front in the rain, and there's no other cars around. He notices that all the other cars are parked like in the very far back of the lot. So what he does is he's like, I don't, it feels like there's something wrong about parking here, so I'm just gonna go park with all the other cars. So he parks his car all the way to the back of the lot. So then he has to walk through the rain up to the building. So now he's drenched, and he gets in, and it's this large, big check-in area, and he's the only one in it except for this one receptionist behind the desk, and it's still pouring rain outside, but as soon as the automatic doors shut, you can't hear it at all. And we just sit in that silence for a second as he walks in, drenched into the waiting room. End of episode.
That's creepy. That's creepy as hell.
Episode 2, Charlie. This is where we get to the meat of the show. David walks up to the receptionist, he signs in, and he's told to wait. He then sits down and waits for a long time as the reception person types away with a large, loud, clanking mechanical keyboard. And he gets very bored as we cut around this massive room with big long shots of him slouching in different positions. He's throwing a rubber ball against the wall, and he's reading a collection of, generic magazines. And he eventually gets up, bored out of his mind, and asks the receptionist how much longer the wait's going to be. And the receptionist turns over and he says, you can head on, at any time that you feel comfortable, anytime you'd like. And David is annoyed. He's like, why didn't you tell me that right away? And the receptionist is like, well, no one else is here. Of course you can go in. And David asks again, like, why didn't you tell me that? Like, why didn't you say anything? And the receptionist simply responds that David did not ask. So David's annoyed.
As you would be. I would be furious.
David's annoyed, but he enters the next room and he follows the signs leading to a small interview room where a man in a white lab coat is waiting. The man stands up when David gets in. He goes, "Finally! We were wondering when you'd be ready." David apologizes and he tries to explain the situation, but the scientist interrupts him and says that, a lot of people take their time out there. That's completely normal. You don't have to worry about it. And David, he just sort of brushes off the situation. He's like, all right, I don't need to explain the whole receptionist confusion to this guy. And he asks, what they're doing. And the man explains that they're just going to hook him up to this machine and they're going to start asking him questions about his life. And he's like, okay. And he just puts 2 little pads on his temple, on his forehead. And then they're going to turn the monitor, turn the machine on to monitor him. So he puts on the little pads, turn on the machine, and they're going to ask questions. David's like, okay, that's fine. He agrees, and he rests on the long therapist couch, and the pads are put on his head, and he asks if there are any dangers. But before he can get an answer, the machine is switched on. All the lights in the place shut off, and the doctor apologizes and walks out of the room so they can turn it back on. And he explains that, there's a limited power supply due to the storm, so the circuit is overwhelmed whenever they switch on the machine and the lights at the same time. And he gets things settled. The lights come back on, machine's back on, and the scientist starts off slow, asking David about his childhood. So David starts going into his childhood. He talks about how he was a small town boy and he liked to play baseball in school. Him and his dad would play catch in the backyard. And he at first thought he wanted to be a professional baseball player. However, once it, got more competitive in middle school, he realized that he didn't actually like sports all that much. He liked to actually play the games, but he didn't like how angry people got and how serious they were, and how he didn't like the competition part. He liked the fun of playing the game, but he didn't like the actual seriousness of it.
Yeah.
His mom, on the other hand, was a very quiet woman who almost was almost like a phantom, is the way he'll describe her. She was, she'd clean around the house and make dinner, but she rarely spoke. She wasn't unaffectionate. She just, she hugged and kissed him, but she rarely had anything to say. She was, a very quiet woman. His dad was a lawyer, and he spent most of his time at work. He was much closer with his dad when he played sports, but once he decided to stop, his dad kind of ran out of ways to bond with him. And David also didn't like to fish. He didn't like to watch sports. He didn't like card games. He liked to watch TV, and he liked going for walks, and he liked being alone. So not a whole lot of things that he can do to bond with his dad or really anybody.
Yeah.
He didn't have a whole lot of friendships because of this as well. And but he did have a few girlfriends in school, but all the relationships were rather short-lived. He was good at talking to girls and listening, but he just didn't have much to say himself, which, that works with some people. If you're the only one asking questions, people like to talk about themselves, so anybody that liked to talk about themselves, he could bond with somewhat. And he'd often just become...
Me and David would be best friends.
Yeah, probably. David would be great on this podcast.
He would be so
He'd be like,
good on every other episode.
Yeah, he'd be really great. He'd be like, oh, that's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Where do you get your ideas from?
Yeah, David could provide the background track whenever one of us does an episode. But anyway,
good.
he just doesn't have a lot to say about himself at all. He doesn't have much to say. And he would often just kind of become whatever his girlfriend needed him to be and stay that way until he no longer felt that he could do it. He'd wear the clothes that she wanted him to wear. He'd do his hair like she wanted him to do. He'd go to whatever event she wanted him to go to. He'd like the same kind of music as her. Just become a complete reflection. And it wasn't like a transformation process completely, because it's more like a chameleon, because he would, as soon as the relationship ends, he'd revert back to his old self. His hair would go back, his clothes would return to what they were before, and that's how it happened. When he breaks up, and sometimes during the relationship, he'd also do this. Like after a long time, he'd suddenly revert to his old self. Like he'd start, dressing how he wants and doing going back to his normal self. And they would reject this abrupt change and break up with him. Like this sudden, because it feels like they were this, couple that was meant to be, and all of a sudden he just completely changes into this other guy, which the guy he's always been, but that he just, hid because he was, just becoming what this other person in the relationship wanted him to be. So this continued into college, where he was mostly listless and only really went because his dad said to go to college. And it wasn't that he was constantly changing his major or anything at college. He just didn't care at all. I mean, he didn't change his major because he didn't care enough to do so. He didn't mind because he was doing a business degree. He didn't mind doing a business degree. He didn't really feel any need to switch to anything else either. He has no passions. His dad just said to do it, and he stuck through it. And he doesn't resent his dad for it. Or he doesn't even dislike the classes. In fact, he was actually okay at school. Not great, but not horrible either, B's and C's kind of kid. And he finished, and he managed to get a job within a few months at a bank in Virginia. And it was when he moved to Virginia, Charlie, that he met his girlfriend that we met at the beginning of the series, Victoria.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
So they lived in the same building, and they often saw each other in the elevator. She was crying one day, so he offered to help her carry her groceries, and they became friends. And she talked about how she had just moved away from her family, and just sort of separated from them, and talked about how they'd always been cold to her because she was a bit of a black sheep in the family. She was not as smart as her brother, or as talented or as smart as her sister, or as talented at arts like her brother. And she felt estranged and sort of cast aside by this family where it seemed like everybody else was exceptional at things, and she was just kind of average.
Yeah.
And so for the first time, she's pouring this out, and for the first time, David opens up about his life and his own dejections in his family and the emptiness he feels, because he finally feels like he's found somebody that also has the kind of problems that he has. She's not really good at anything. She feels rejected by her family. She doesn't feel like she has a purpose in life, and these are all the things that David's felt forever, but he's never really been able to confide in anyone about. So he starts opening up to her, and they sort of bond over their shared void, and kind of feel like they can fill each other's emptiness, because it's no longer, it's not just the one, you're not alone in your own emptiness. So they kind of fill that for each other, and they fall in love, they move in together, they do everything together. But over time, she starts to recover. She, no longer feels empty. She reconciles with her family. She finds passions, hobbies. She grows. She'll start go out and painting. She's got friends. She's, feels more social in life, and she's, developing and getting away from that, that rock bottom that she hit when she met David. But David, he stayed the same. And at this point, as he, when David says this line that he stayed the same as she grew, the doctor then interrupts him and says that it's time to move on to the next room. End of episode.
Oh. So this is really, we're very much getting into David's thing. Like David's, depressing life. Alright, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, not, again, I said that the title doesn't totally hold up, but I think it does in the end a little bit. So, episode 3, David is disoriented. He was just pouring out his whole life story, and he feels a bit weird about it. Like that he just sort of divulged everything, and then the doctor kind of just pulled him out of it. Kind of feels like he didn't really mean to say everything that he said, but it just sort of came out. And he's in a vulnerable state. His whole life's been uprooted. All of his plans with his girlfriend, he didn't really have any plans, but his routine that he had with his girlfriend and his job all just disappeared. And he's been kind of living a very strange life the last couple of weeks. So he's a bit disoriented, and he gets up from the couch, and he's surprised, that he said everything that he did so freely. And he looks around, but the scientist has already walked out of the room. So he walks into the hall asking about when he gets paid, but all he sees is the path to stage 2 of the trial. So he follows the signs until he gets to a room. It's a large courtroom, Charlie, that's nearly entirely dark, except for a lone light at the defendant's trial table, which is on the right when you're walking into a courtroom. And he slowly approaches.
All right, Mr. Lawyer Boy.
When he does all the... Thank you for interrupting my moment with that little joke. So, it's entirely dark. He approaches the lone light at the defendant's table, asking, doctor, what's going on? Am I supposed to go over here? And when he gets there, he's blinded suddenly when all the lights flash on in the courtroom, and he's pushed into his seat. A lawyer, Charlie, is standing next to him, and the courtroom is completely full. They're shouting. People are yelling behind him. There's a full jury sat in the jury box. There's a prosecutor at the table next to him, 2 prosecutors. There's the judge is there. All the courtroom clerks are there. It's a full, completely, jam-packed courtroom. The judge has to shout over everyone else and bangs his gavel, calling for the trial to begin. At first, it's gonna feel like all just legal mumbo-jumbo. But then then David hears the prosecutor call out, "The prosecution calls the people versus David Ghent." Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum.
David's attorney has him stand, and they read out a list of charges, which just seems to be a list of the things he has done in his life. We then watch the entire trial with witnesses from his life, girlfriends, his mother, his friends, his father, and they paint a very different portrait of his life than the story we have just heard. He doesn't seem, Charlie, like this disaffected, listless man, but rather a rude, obnoxious slacker who has spent his life wasting his time. So this whole episode is going to be the trial. So we'll see, everyone talking. We'll see Victoria come up and talk about how he seemed so sweet and sensitive at first, but over time he just became this apathetic kind of asshole who just didn't really care about their relationship or anything at all, and never really seemed to want to go any deeper into her life than just the basics of the relationship and of conversation as well. That's important. He doesn't seem to care about how she feels about things. He's just asking questions to ask them. But he doesn't feel like that, from what our story was. It's just how he is. So the feeling I want you to get from this trial is that he's basically being put on trial for the way he is. He can't help that he just doesn't have passion. He can't help his tone and the way he does things. He's not a bad guy. I want the audience to feel like he's kind of just a misunderstood person, but his actions do obviously give people reactions, which are valid as well. The way people are feeling from what he's saying makes sense, but at the same time, as the audience, you understand, him intimately after that second episode, so you get a feeling of oh no, but they just don't get it. He just doesn't have whatever that is in him to give him
just a
feeling and passion.
Yeah, he's misunderstood. He's like the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
He's just a misunderstood boy who needs compassion.
Exactly. He just doesn't feel any sort of excitement in his life. And he doesn't care about things the way other people do. But that doesn't make him a bad person, necessarily. But it's, everyone in his life comes through and they say all these things, and he seems like this rude, obnoxious slacker, as I said. And the episode ends when the prosecution rests and David is taken to his cell. Episode 4, Charlie. We're coming to the conclusion. There's 5 episodes, if I didn't say that earlier.
Okay.
Episode 4. David is taken out of his cell and brought in front of the court. It's time for the defense to begin. His defense attorney makes a very strong case that David is not a bad guy. He just is without purpose. He was without opportunity, without excitement, without meaning in his life. And he doesn't deserve to be punished for that. He deserves mercy. He's young and he deserves a chance to find something in his life that makes him feel and makes him excited and makes him want to, pursue things. And this attorney is going to give this very rousing speech. He's going to call many of the witnesses that or he's not going to recall the witnesses, but calling other witnesses in David's life, people that, like people from his baseball team, talking about that he enjoyed the sport. He was, a good kid, and, his teachers who saw a bit of a spark in him, and how he still put in work in school, his boss and some of his coworkers who were like, he was a fun guy around the office. He, proving that he's a nice guy. Not that, he's not going to show that he has any passion or anything like that, but he was a nice guy that tried in his life, at the very least. And he shouldn't be punished just because he doesn't have a passion. It's just that, he's still a good person in the end.
Still a man, still a human being.
And after this
not be
rousing,
treated like this.
Yeah, exactly. And after this rousing speech, his attorney takes him aside and says that it's going to be a close one. And David is nervous, and he's taken to a cell where he's trying to understand what happened. Episode 5, Charlie, the finale. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
David is taken from his cell, and the verdict is read. Guilty on all counts. Guilty, Charlie,
no.
of a wasted life.
Damn.
He spends a long time wallowing in his cell. Most of this episode is him in his cell, rethinking everything he has ever done, going through his life. This is probably, we've seen his life through a lot of eyes. We saw it through his eyes, we saw it through his friends and family's eyes, and now we're seeing it through his, sort of reflective eyes. And we're getting the most probably complete picture of the way his life has gone. And we can kind of see that some of the things that people said were true, and the feelings that he had as well were true. It's not his fault, but he has been, his life has been kind of a waste, he feels, and he agrees a bit with the verdict, and he spends all this time wallowing in his cell, rethinking his life, and he comes to terms that even if he could go back and redo his entire life, he wouldn't have done anything differently.
Damn.
Not that he, is proud of that. He's like, even if I could go back, I was just born without passion. And to fake it would be just as bad as not having any at all. And we watch Charlie as he is hanged in the courtyard. And as all the life goes out of him, and his eyes shut, we cut to the doctor standing over his lifeless body on the therapy couch. The doctor is surprised at what happened and says that the power surge from the lightning and the storm must have overpowered the machine and killed him instantly as soon as they flipped it on. And he turns to the receptionist and asks the receptionist if he signed the waiver. And the receptionist replies that he did. End of episode. End of show.
End of show. The backup plan. I like it.
I think it's fun. I like the courtroom idea a lot. I had a lot of fun with that one. And I like going back.
I think it's a fun
I think there's an
show.
episode of Black Mirror where they did that, and I kind of stole that from them, where they it's revealed that everything, most of the stuff that happened after the person had already died. They died as soon as the machine was started. or something like that. I can't really remember what happened in that episode, but I remember the person dies like as soon as they turn on a machine, and most of the episode they're already dead. They just don't realize it.
We don't realize it yet as the audience.
But we get that reveal right at the end of it that oh, well, the whole him explaining his whole life, him in the courtroom, this is all, his brain in the moments where he just died, or maybe it's the afterlife, who knows? It's not abundantly clear.
Yeah,
and,
could be anything.
Yeah, exactly. But Charlie, that
nothing.
was the backup plan.
I enjoyed that quite a bit. I thought it was fun. Dark, but fun. And an interesting character study.
I asked you last week, I said it was going to be sad, and you thought, you made jokes that it was going to make people cry, which I denied, and said it would probably just make them frown. So my question to you, Charlie, is have you frowned during this episode?
I did frown when he was being hanged for not being passionate enough. I frowned a little bit.
Damn.
So good job. Success.
Hell yeah. That's my dream, Charlie.
Yeah.
All I want to do in life is make people frown. And I'm glad that the listeners of this podcast could be along for it.
Well, goddamn, Jay. God bless America, and God bless the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. Thank you all for listening. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me has always been my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat. Remember, we'll be here next week with a brand new television series by the title of...
Your new title, Charlie, which you already know, is The Flat Mars Society.
Flat Mars Society.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
The Flat Mars. I don't know what the hell you're gonna do with this thing. Have you already
don't
started
either.
writing it?
I came up with an idea, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna stick with it.
Okay.
So I have no idea. No, I guess I haven't started writing it, but I'll get there eventually.
Okay. Well, if you want to see what Charlie's come up with next week for the Flat Mars Society, you'll just have to tune back in on Monday. But for now, we will see you next time.
See you next time.